Mount Zion Baptist Church of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Welcome to Celebrating Black Excellence. With your hosts, the conscious of Kalamazoo, Brother Buddy Hammond, and the pastor of the Mount Zion Baptist Church, Dr. Addis Moore.
Welcome to another installment of Celebrating Black Excellence, where we actually look among us. We see individuals that look like us that are doing phenomenal things in the Kalamazoo area. And so we are really literally making history as we live this time. And there's those among us that are making tremendous impact. So welcome back. Take this time to share, to call someone, let them know that we're back and we're celebrating Black excellence. And tonight we're talking about closing the economic gap. We're looking at really economic security and closing this gap, what it looks like, and how do we do that? And we're talking to individuals that are actually doing that on a daily basis. So, buddy, it's good to see you. We missed you last week, but we made it through. It was a struggle, but we made it. So welcome back.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back. It's nice to be back on the set and know that I still got a chair here. You know?
Now, we did get some calls. People were asking, where's Buddy? So you were missed. Not only did I miss you, but individuals missed you. They were calling like, hey, where's Buddy? I said, well, he'll be back.
Y'all keep them calls coming.
So, Buddy, I've been hearing some great reports. We've been doing this for the entire month of February. We had various individuals on talking about this whole idea, some of the statistics that exist between white America, Black America, and the economic gap, and some of the things that has caused that. And so individuals now are beginning to ask questions. They've been inspired, they've been motivated, and receiving information. What are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing the same thing from people, and it's good to hear you voice your opinion and let us know how you feel about the program and what we're doing here. But as we was talking earlier before we came on camera, with all the negative stuff going on in the world, we want to try to put some positive things out there for us. Some positive news, some positive people, some positive progress, everything from a positive standpoint. And so far, we've been able to do that with the guests that we've had on the show, and we are continuing that tonight with the guests we have tonight. And we hope that you will continue to let us know, because if you do, then maybe we can keep this going and keep doing positive things. And if you have someone that you feel we need to talk about and highlight on this show, please let us know that as well. And I'm sure that Pastor Moore will tell you how you can do that before the show is over. So hearing good things, and we're going to continue to try to do good things.
Okay, make sure that you've shared now. Make sure you've called someone, tell them, look, you need to tune in tonight. We've got phenomenal guests, so just wait till we introduce them. You're going to be just floored. You're going to be excited about who we have tonight. I can't wait because one of the individuals that's here tonight, one of the guests brought a whole church, a whole church family, all the members in the church.
And they just her family.
Everybody that's ever been a member of that church came and showed up tonight. So we're excited, and we're excited about everyone. So, buddy, look, man, we got some phenomenal guests. Let's get into it, because we got 3 guests tonight. Who we have?
Hey, well, to start off, we have Sister Tawala Lockett-Jones, who is well known throughout the community as a real estate agent, brokerage, and all of that good stuff, and also as an author of children's books. And she's here tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit more about her. I was looking through her resume, which was about 18, 19 pages long, and I was trying to figure out what to pull out of there, so maybe we'll just let her pull some things out. We also have with us Sister Ian, am I pronouncing that right?
You are.
Ian Hamilton, Esquire, who is a lawyer, and she is here tonight, and she's going to be talking about some things, because she's involved with some things that I think a lot of us don't never really think about, like estate planning, trust, what other things she's involved with. She's involved in estate planning, probate administration, trust administration, guardianship, and controversialship and business law. So all of this is something that we're going to talk about. And then we're happy to have back up with us once again our old friend and trusted friend who always have some good information for us. And we got to have somebody here that deals with the money. And Brother Nate, he's here. Brother Nate Bolton, who is the Vice President of Old National Bank, is always here to give us some good financial advice and bring some things to the table that would help us not only make us earn money, but show us how to make our money work for us. And we appreciate him being here. So
that's a tremendous lineup. Think about it. We've got the person to deal with real estate, the land, we've got the lawyer, and the banker.
There you go.
I think we're getting ready to close this economic gap because we got the right people on the panel. But Nate, let's start this and let's talk about some of the statistics that's out there about the economic gap that exists in our country and our community. Can we start with some of those stats, Nate?
Sure. I think probably the one that always, when we speak of money, the one that always jumps out is here in Kalamazoo, 28% of the population lives in poverty. And if you take that 28%, 2 out of every 3 of those are of color. So that tells you right there what you're working with from the beginning, I guess is the best way to say it. Then you go to the other extreme. There's, 2,755 billionaires in the world, and less than 1% or less than 27 of those are African American. So when you're talking about wealth, you have to understand that usually that doesn't correlate with African Americans, but there's something there that we need to continue to push forward because historically we haven't talked about it like we are now. So I think that's an important factor is it used to be taboo for our parents to talk to us about money, and one of the things I always try to encourage parents to do now is to help prepare their kids and make sure they understand the importance of money and how to start preserving it. I can't wait to hear some of the things we talk about estate planning and conservatorship and some of the things that we can do to help our kids so we are in a better position in the future.
Now, isn't there a stat out there about land ownership as far as in this country, United States, like 98% or better land?
Yes. And that percentage is continuing to go south or in the wrong direction. 98% of the land is owned by non-blacks or people of non-color, I guess is the best way to say that. So white people in general are owning 98% of the land in our country right now.
But now in 1910, it was 14%.
Yes.
The blacks own 14% of the land, so it's going down. It's 2023, it's going down.
I think it's important. I mean, history, I think, is something that we all should remember or pay attention to. I mean, there's a lot of different things that have happened over time, but one of the things that we don't do well is protect our assets. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but we will see more times than not, if there's someone who's letting their assets go, there's usually a person of color.
Now, talk about this a little bit with the billionaires you talk about that's in the United States. I think we've about 10 that's black, and the rest is over what? How many? 600 and?
Yes, in the United States, there's a little under 650 billionaires, and 10 of those are black.
So let's talk about how blacks became billionaires and how whites become it. Let's talk about that because we want to just set the stage why we need to close this economic gap because it exists. And so what we want to do is expose it and talk about it. And we know there's some systemic stuff that has to happen and that individuals are working on. But in the meantime, we can do some stuff. So how do most whites get theirs?
Most whites get theirs through inheritance and over time accumulation of wealth. When you speak of the 10 blacks that are billionaires, probably the top 2 are the least known, which would be David Stewart and Robert Smith. The others, like Michael Jordan or Oprah Winfrey, Jay-Z, Tyler Perry, I'm sure I'm not going to get them all, Kanye, all of those, those names through entertainment, whether it's through athletics. Oprah would be, through a lot of different venues of stardom, I guess is the word I would use, but most people don't really accumulate wealth over generations. Now, hopefully they will for their ancestors, but right now that's not what you commonly see.
So with blacks, it's usually self-made.
Yes.
And with others, it is inherited.
Yes.
And so that's one reason why this economic gap persists. So I think, buddy, anything else on the stats before we get into
nothing else on the stats, but I would like to ask Brother Bolton if you would clarify something, because nowadays, you know, a lot of black people, we make money. We make a lot of money. A lot of people making more money than we ever had before. Can you just kind of let people know the difference between having money and actually having what's net worth? You know what I'm talking about?
I definitely do. I think even appreciating the word wealth, you know, there's a huge difference between wealth and money. Mm-hmm. And the accumulation of wealth is not just money, it's assets. And really, the average American, when you're accumulating wealth, that means you're protecting your assets. Opposed to having money, you can make money, but if you're spending money and you're not protecting your assets, then you're really not accumulating wealth. Right. So I guess when you say differentiating between the two, the important thing to understand is if I have a home, I have an asset. If I'm renting, I don't have an asset. So if I take my salary and I go buy a car and I do whatever else with it, but I don't invest any of it, and even more importantly, then I don't protect my money I put it in a bank and I don't have any beneficiaries. I don't have a trust. I don't have estate planning. I am not protecting my wealth for my family or for those who may come behind me.
So here comes the help. And I think you kind of eased us in, because we got a real estate, we got a broker, we've got an owner here, and she's going to help us. And so, Tawala, let's start here. Your business, how does that help us close that economic gap?
So my business, Lockett Jones Realty Group, one way it helps to close the wealth gap is that it is black-owned. So our business employs independent contractors who are also realtors, and it allows them an opportunity to make a living as a career as a real estate agent. Another way that we help to close the wealth gap is by promoting home ownership in our community. One of the biggest reasons I wrote the book, Princess Mackey Buys a House, was to plant seeds of home ownership in our children. So as they grow up, as Mr. Bolton said, a lot of times those conversations are not being had in the home. So with a book like this as a tool to open up dialogue in the family about home ownership and about financial literacy. Another way that we are helping to close the wealth gap is to not only talk about home ownership, but to talk about the importance of when you become a homeowner. There's a statistic that shows that African Americans do not buy their first home until the average age is 48 years old, compared to white Americans who buy their first home in their late 20s and early 30s, therefore giving them a huge head start on building equity in the home, trading up or stepping up to a bigger home, and just having more options, you know, in the future of what to do with that equity that they've built.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sister Lockett Jones, we know that we already talked about you being in the real estate business and everything, and you've been doing this for a long time. People need to know you haven't just started this. You have well over 25 years experience of this. You've also had experience in managing over 30 of your own investment properties, so you know about investment and everything. Just tell us a little bit, what motivated you to pursue this business opportunity?
From childhood, I've always had an interest in real estate. At the time, I didn't know, I want to be a realtor, but I knew I loved houses, I loved architecture. My mother loved to go and look at houses. My parents, my father's here tonight, they raised us to own things. So a lot of African Americans don't get that in the home growing up, but we were taught at an early age to own things. I believe when you teach children to be a homeowner in the future, as they grow up, the actual choices that they make are seeds. So when they plant those choices, hopefully they're planting good choices, good financial choices, because whatever they plant, we know the sowing and reaping, whatever they plant, that's what's gonna come up. So if they never learn, you don't go off to college and start taking a bunch of student loan debt. You don't just get the credit card because they're giving you a free t-shirt, So when we start teaching them those things, they'll start making better decisions even from a younger age. And so me right now as a realtor, I spend most of my time trying to help people repair credit. If we can avoid that as they're growing up, they can become homeowners a lot sooner because they don't need 5 to 10 years, number one, to get their mindset right, and then to fix their credit in order to buy a house.
So one other thing before we leave you, talk about how important it is to actually own your home. Can you talk about the importance of that?
Absolutely. Home ownership is the cornerstone of building generational wealth in America. Almost any millionaire, billionaire that you talk to have real estate as a big part of their portfolio. Real estate is very important. When you don't own things, you have no power. So home ownership gives you power. And I always use the example, if you're renting and the city or the government, the municipality wants to come in and do something on your street, next door to your house, in your neighborhood, you're a renter, they don't have to ask your permission to do that. If you own your home, they have to send you a letter and say, this is what we're trying to do. We're gonna have a meeting. You're invited to come to this meeting and let your voice be heard about this matter. So that right there shows you when you control the land, the property, the homes, you have a voice. And when you don't, you do not have a voice.
Wow, that's powerful.
That's powerful.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Powerful. What's the name of the book?
Princess Mackie Buys a House.
Okay, we're going to keep saying that because we're pushing the book. Attorney Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us and thank you for being here. What you do, and first of all, we thank God for this business. How does your business help us close the economic gap?
So Mr. Bolton mentioned protecting your assets, and you also mentioned it, Twala, making sure that we are passing our wealth down to the next generation. That's what we do at Hamilton Law. My focus is on estate planning, and I help people put together documents to make sure that if something happens to them, their asset just doesn't go away. It's passed down to their kids and their kids' kids. It's super important. There's often times where no planning is done and people are in court, they're fighting. There's lots of fees spent on getting, if it's real property transferred, and that reduces the wealth of that individual. So we do all of that planning, and we try to get people to plan ahead. Another way, and we've all talked about this as well, is being owners. And so at our business, we help people open their own businesses. And so we try to be that catalyst for people to have their way to own something, and just helping them figure out what type of entity to put together so that they can be the owners of their own business and they can pass that on to their children as well.
So what have you seen, Attorney, among blacks, some of those hindrances to help us do those types of things?
Can you repeat that?
What are some hindrances do you see?
Hindrances, yes.
Some things that's in our community that causes us not to be able to do that as well.
I think that it may be the way that we think sometimes, that we can't have wealth, or that it might be too difficult. And so I would hope, in our community, especially with forums like this, is that we can tell people that you can do it, and just change that mindset. I will say that I never really thought that I would own, my own business in a law firm that is, thank God, flourishing, because you get nervous. And I think changing our mindset will go a long way.
Okay, so now you moved into, so what motivated you? Because you said you didn't think, but you actually did it. So what motivated you to?
Because I saw that it could be done in a different way. I worked at a couple of law firms. My husband, who's my partner at our law firm, worked at a couple law firms as well. And we saw a need to have a place, and particularly our community, where people can go to feel comfortable. Being a lawyer or seeing a lawyer, coming into a lawyer's office is often intimidating. And so we wanted to be that place where there's transparency, where we can, guide people and make them feel calm. And that's what really motivated me. I knew that it could be a place that, didn't intimidate people. And as well as having my own business, that ownership piece is something that I really craved.
Oh, Attorney Hamilton, we know that you've been doing this well over 13
Yes.
years going, and we know that you are also licensed to practice in Michigan and Virginia.
Yes.
So we know you know what you're talking about. So.
I try.
But I think we mentioned something, and you mentioned it, estate planning.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people feel like, well, hey, I only own this small house, and that's all I got. But it's more to it than that, because whatever you own, that's all part of your estate. Am I right?
You are exactly right. And I wrote a blog article. It inspired me when someone came up to me and they said, I don't own anything. I don't have anything. I don't need an estate plan. And I just try to convey that it's not really about, the amount that you have. We all have something. We have, you probably have a car. You have tangible items that are important to you. Estate planning also involves nominating a guardian, and that's totally separate than building wealth. But if something happens to you, making sure you have plans in place for your kids. So estate planning really is about planning ahead, protecting your assets, making sure that your family is not stuck in court, which is what will happen if you don't plan ahead. And so no matter what you have, there's a plan that we can put in place for you to protect your assets.
So if you don't have a plan in place, what does it look like when you got to go to court and you don't have a plan? Can you talk about that? Because I think a lot of our people don't have a plan and are stuck in court.
Okay.
And so can you talk about how that looks for those
sure can.
individuals that hadn't gone yet and still don't have a plan?
Yes, everyone get a plan. So what happens, so let's say that I have a house that is just in my name alone. So on the title, on the deed, it says Ian Hamilton, and I pass away. It doesn't matter that I'm married. My family is going to have to go through what's called probate court in order for that house to be passed to my husband and to my kids. I have 2 kids. So what that entails is filing documents with the probate court in the county that you live in and getting appointed by the court as what's called a personal representative. Right out the gate, we charge in our office, which we have good fees, I would say. We charge a minimum of $3,000 for probate. So there's a chunk right there that you could have avoided by planning ahead. There's also court costs, and there's time, the time that it takes to go from getting that house into your loved one's names is so much longer if you don't plan ahead. If you come to our office or any attorney to plan ahead and change the titling of that house and doing something to avoid probate, there's going to be no court at all, no $3,000 fee, no time, and it's just, a quick consultation for us to take care of it. And so it's just a laborious process, and you have to remember, if someone passes away, you're mourning. The last thing you want to do is go to court. And so that's why we always say, try to plan ahead.
Wow.
Going to ask you 2 ladies, we're going to get back to you with that money thing, brother.
Yeah, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, we get back to you with that money thing. You the money man. But I guess this is for both of you ladies. And Attorney Hamilton, we'll start with you first. When it comes to owning your own business, because you said you decided, hey, you want to have your own practice, your own law firm. You have your own real estate, and you now your own brokerage business and everything. What advice would you give those who want to start their own business someday? What type of attitude should they have?
So I will be honest, at some times, especially in the beginning, it was difficult. So you have to have the attitude that you can do this. You have to keep, pumping yourself up, show up every day, because it won't be, easy. But if you ask for help, find mentors, get out in our community. People love helping, having people on your side. I would just say keep going, even when, times feel rough. Keep going.
I would say for people to learn the business side of business. We have a lot of people who know how to cook, know how to cut hair, know how to wash a car, but they don't learn the business side of the business, and so they'll fail. Because I don't care how good your food is, if you don't know how to properly order, prepare, package, distribute, then there's going to be a failure there. So I always say, learn the business side of business. Know your why. Why are you going into this particular business? It has to be a big enough why to where it makes sense. If your why is just, I want to make a lot of money, that's not a good enough why, because it's really going to be more work for you than fun. You should love what you do to the point where the money becomes a byproduct. When you do what you love and you do it well and you serve others with excellence, the money literally comes and it becomes like a byproduct of the service that you provide. So I would say to know their why, save your money, because you're going to need money. There's grants and things out there available. However, you need your own money. You need to show that you have some skin in the game when you're starting a business. And also, I grew up in church. So with everything, we seek God, we pray, we take wise counsel. And the Bible tells us to sit and count up the cost, to make sure that we have that business plan. And we have the people around us, like a good attorney, a good CPA, the people that can help us in the areas. You don't have to know everything. You just got to know where to go to get the information that you need.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Nate, you can get a little piece of this. And you mentioned it, and I think you kind of broached the subject, how important it is for you to have saved some of your own money.
Absolutely.
Can we talk about how important that is, Nate?
I love the statement, skin in the game, because a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to start a business, but they have nothing to put into that business from an economic standpoint or money. And no one is going to basically fund your business for you, and you have nothing to put into it yourself. So you really have to have some type of money saved to go into that business. Or another thing is, people say, well, I don't have enough money. Both of them talked about getting help. I mean, every week for the last few weeks when you saw the business owners, they told you about all the different resources that they sought after to be able to get to the successful point that they did. There's grants. There's all kind of minority grants, for example, also. But there's different things that you can do for financing. But those things are all going to be after you can show you have something to put into this yourself. Imagine anyone come up to you and say, I want you to fund this for me. You really have to be able to say, this is what I have, and now from there, help me from that standpoint. I guess the biggest message that I would say is a lot of times people want to do it all on their own. They don't want to ask for help, but they don't want to go out and seek the information. Sister Lockett Jones mentioned church. Our pastor last week, the sermon was about basically being obedient, and until you can go and ask for help or basically start paying attention to others and not just trying to do it on your own. And that is the same thing in business. You cannot try to do it on your own. That's important.
Yeah. Now, we're talking to both of you who own your own business and everything, and man, you're doing what you're doing, and you're doing it real good and everything. But we know that it took some getting to that point, right? So, question for both of you. What hurdles have you had to cross to get to where you are now?
Yeah.
That's a good one. So I will be honest again. So, starting out, it's nerve-wracking. There are people who won't believe in you. There are people telling you you can't do it. And again, showing up. Those are the things that I had to keep doing. I was a new law firm in town. Our goal is to get clients. And the first couple of months, the phone was not ringing, and that was a big hurdle. Maybe other people would have just stopped and said, no, I can't do this. But definitely having the mindset of, I can do this, I'm going to keep going. And then asking for help. There's definitely other attorneys that aren't in town here, but in other areas in Michigan that I spoke to for advice to see, what would be the best way to do this. Asking for help, like you said, is a great idea because you will have those hurdles.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Twala?
So with real estate, historically, real estate has been a white male-dominated industry. So coming in as a 25-year-old African-American female real estate agent, that was a hurdle within itself. Because you have to prove yourself. You got to be twice as good, you got to work harder. So that was a hurdle, I would say one of the bigger hurdles. And I even go back to Willie Mae Pearson. That's who I started under. She started over 50 years ago. And I remember her telling me the story of she went to a meeting, all white men around the table. When she got there, they started handing her their coats for her to hang up the coats because they thought that she was there to be the coat check girl. So it's just things like that continue, I think, to be a hurdle for African Americans and for women. So when you're an African American woman, it's kind of like a double hit to you. So I think that's been one of the hurdles. Again, youth and inexperience was another hurdle when you're 25 and, you're looking at people like, hey, let me sell you a $300,000-$400,000 house, They're looking at you like, I don't know if you have the experience, to be able to handle something like that. So that's another hurdle early on. No longer have that problem because I'm no longer 25, so I've got some experience under my belt. But I would say those were two big hurdles getting started.
Okay, we're talking about legacy and building legacy. So let's talk about this for a moment. When it comes to legacy, what do you see for your children, your grandchildren, because of what you are doing? What do you see down the line? I know the Bible talks about leaving inheritance for your children's children, and we're talking about inherited wealth, and that's one way to get it. So what do you see when you look at that? What do you see for your children and grandchildren, to each of you?
So right now, I have two young kids. They are 8 and 6, 2 boys, and they want to be NBA All-Stars. So after we get over that, if they decide that they, want to go to law school and follow in my husband's footsteps, I would love to be able to pass our knowledge and the firm down to them and have that keep going. But if not, what I really hope that I instill in them is that they can own their own things, that they can build wealth, and hopefully they see that we support other Black businesses and that it's a thing, that they can do it as well. And so, of course, I'm an estate planning attorney. I have my documents in place to make sure my assets are protected so that they pass down to my kids and their kids. And I just want to set a great example for them and their friends and their kids. And so, you got to practice what you preach. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Amen. Right.
For me, I don't see either one of my sons wanting to follow in my footsteps. I have a 23-year-old and a 33-year-old. Neither has, the bug has not bit them for real estate. One of my sons does own a 4-unit apartment building. So the investment part of it, he seems to have kind of a leaning towards that. But as far as my business, I have 3 of my nieces that are real estate agents that work on my team. I have a lot of nephews that I meet with regularly, that we talk about things like investing and real estate and all of that. So if no one wants to carry on the brokerage, I do look at the brokerage as a way that if they decided to sell it, take that money and do what they're passionate about, I just know that I set them up with enough wealth to where they can go out and do what they need to do to serve their community and to, ensure that their children are going to be okay.
Well, you gonna leave a legacy to somebody.
I'm hoping they're gonna leave it for me now. One of the things that I take pride in is financial literacy, which is something that I teach a lot. So credit was mentioned earlier, and a lot of times I don't think it's appreciated enough how much you are giving away money or assets by having to restore yourself or pay more for something because you started out with bad credit. So part of my legacy for me is being able to teach financial literacy to my children, but also to others. And I really try to find as many African Americans to do that for, because I think that is an important thing. And there's some people, I mean, everyone makes mistakes. There's going to be times when people have bad credit. I understand that. But a lot of times people will give up at that point and just pay higher interest rates. There's so many things that you can do to repair your credit. There's so many things you can do to get back on the right track. That may even be sometimes how people become business owners. So legacy sometimes we're taught that you give back. You're judged by your work. So you're able to give back to others. So one of the things I try to take pride in is that. They were saying the ages, my boys, I have two older boys that are engineers in their mid-30s and a 22-year-old in college. And the thing about all of them is I know that I've talked to them about credit, and I know they understand the importance of it. And that alone will help them when you start talking about wealth or attaining wealth, because they won't have to pay more for something that someone else is paying less for.
Now, you talked about supporting, you mentioned when you were talking, supporting black businesses.
Yes.
Other black businesses. How important is that as far as closing this economic gap? Can each of you talk to that?
Yeah, I would say it's so important. If I'm looking for a real estate agent or an accountant or a wealth management advisor, I'm going to look to my people first. Supporting each other first is so important. It's important for our kids to see that we're supporting other black businesses. And if we want to grow our wealth within our community, let's keep it in our community as best we can.
Yeah, and we've all heard that, well, most of us have probably heard that statistic on how long a black dollar stays in the black community. And I think it's like less than one turn,
Wow.
But like Ian is saying, we have to work with one another, And in the businesses that we're in, we're dealing with higher dollar value assets. So you may have black people in the black community that will go and get their hair cut at a black barbershop or get their car washed at a black, detail shop or another black business where they're spending less than, $100. But then when they talk about, oh, I'm getting ready to buy a house, now it's like, oh, I don't know if that black business is going to be able to do that for me, So they don't have that confidence in us. And a lot of that, I think, is just historically what was done to us mentally, but they don't have that same kind of confidence that African Americans can be professional and experts in their field and really know what they're doing, So we got to start kind of dispelling some of that, I think, and trust one another.
I agree with everything that's been said. I think something that has been that's resonated with me is in banking, confidentiality is important. And I think sometimes you can use the word trust or whatever. People will say, well, I don't want him, telling my business. And I know how important confidentiality is, and that's true for their businesses as well. But what's funny is that they will go and pay more money, for example, for an attorney or for a realtor than they will for someone of color, because usually, if you're African American, you have to be competitive in your pricing.
Right.
There's no way you're going to be the top, fee person and be able to be successful historically. So it's unfortunate because usually the African American business person is going to work harder for you also. So you're really to the sister, I want to say Lockett Jones' point is that dollar isn't staying in the black business. We're not supporting each other, but usually that's the person who's going to work the hardest for you. And I know when people bank with me, they know that confidentiality is so important because they know I can't talk about their business because I won't be able to be successful. And I know that's true in their businesses as well. They're not going to go and share, but people don't trust, historically, they don't trust someone that they see of color because they're afraid who they may know or what they may say, when in essence, that's the person who's going to help you the most.
This question is for all three of you. Malcolm X once said that as African Americans, our position in this country has changed, but our condition remains the same. By that, he's talking about the fact that we mentioned that we make more money, we drive big cars, we hold offices, we've even had a black president and everything. But when you look at us as a people as a whole and the conditions many of us are still living in, they remain the same. We're talking about economic empowerment and everything, and this question is for all three of you. We'll start with you, Brother Bolton. What can we as African American people do to improve our economic condition?
I think first and foremost is support each other. I think that's one of the misnomers is once I just want to make mine, so to speak, or once I get mine, I'm going to move on, opposed to understanding that there's so much more you can do by reaching out and helping others. And I can tell you there's so many African Americans who help each other. When you reach out to start a business, I mean, I've heard some of the business people in the last 2 weeks say who helped them and who they referred to. So I think we need to do more in the sense of supporting each other, but it's also communicating and educating our youth, because so many of them don't know what to do or how to do it. And it's so important that we don't allow them to continue to the same cycle of not being educated or what to do or how to do it. Understanding how to protect your assets means having beneficiaries and having trust. I mean, there's so many examples of people who will just walk away and say, well, I don't want to be bothered with that, and just leave the money to the state even, because they don't have the education or know how to do it. I mean, there's so many examples of how people just leave wealth on the table. So how can we do better? I think the best way is educating each other, but also helping each other.
I think it goes to mindset. We have to change our mindsets, because as our incomes grow, we're just spending more money on things that go down in value. We're consumers. So I think with the mindset, that's the first place we have to start. We have to start thinking differently about money and wealth, and it starts with education, educating our youth, and allowing them to make better choices as they grow up. So I think that mindset, we really got to speak to that. And then also financial literacy, learning to budget, learning to save. We live in like a microwave generation, and really wealth is built slow over time, you know. So we've got this, wealth is like a crock pot. And this quick, I'm making money on TikTok, I'm trying to get in the bag, and all the little things that they say, they're all about just making income. And you talked about income versus wealth, and that's just it. They make a lot of income, and then the more income you make with the same mentality, you just got more money to do more foolish things with, but you don't have anything that you're building or growing.
Those are all really good things, well, both of what you said. Now I have to follow that. So I would say the same thing, educating our youth, but not only our youth. There are people who come to me who are not young, and they still need the education. So having things like this to educate our people so that they understand what to do to get out of, to build that wealth. And then, of course, because it's what I do, planning ahead, protecting assets. not thinking that, someone will take care of it. Getting that education and knowledge about how to plan ahead and not leave it to the state.
Okay, how about this? What are some systemic things? Because in spite systems, in spite structures that are in place, you're a lawyer, you're a broker, you're a banker. What are some systemic things now that still exist that perpetuate this economic gap? We'll start with you, Nate. Some things you see now that's still real, but we still got to work through them. But there are some systemic things that still perpetuate this gap.
I think systemically, one of the biggest things that I see is the habitual thing that I'm going to do what I've always seen others do. But I think, I say this every time I get the chance to say it, is if you don't do anything else, is put beneficiaries on your accounts. I think that's a systemic thing is people say, well, I don't trust someone, I don't want anybody on my account. If they're a beneficiary, they can't touch your money until you pass away. But at least you have someone that you are leaving that money to. That's in the simplest form. But a systemic thing that I see is people will think, I have bad credit, so I can't repair it. I think that is really a prevalent thing in the African American community is I always have to pay more, I always have to take the tough road, but they won't go get help. They won't ask anybody, how do I repair this, or take the avenue to be able to do it. So I see that generation after generation. And the other thing is I'll see people who do have good credit or have the ability to get, say, that low interest rate house loan, but because my family has always gone to this high interest rate person, that's where I'm going, because they've been able to be successful, or they believe or don't trust that this other person is going to be able to help them. And then last but not least, they don't prepare themselves to be able, right now it's very difficult in the real estate market to buy a home because there's a shortage of homes. So it's a lot easier to turn someone away because they're not prepared. So systemically, we don't prepare ourselves until we're ready to act, opposed to planning and getting our ducks in a row. So I guess when you say systemically, what we don't do well is prepare, and we don't do well is we don't trust. And I think those two things are something that we have to overcome as a people, is to be able to trust each other, to help each other, to get to where we need to get to be able to secure our assets.
And what I'm saying, I hear you saying, Nate, and I know all you're saying is what we can do on our part and the things that are inherent in the African American community. But there are systems in place to take advantage of ignorance, take advantage of the fact that individuals are not prepared, that you are, so then we're going to charge you a higher interest rate. So there's a system designed that you're going to come unprepared, and we're going to take advantage of you, and then we're going to keep you. Because I'm talking about the systems in place now, the laws and the way that individuals operate that perpetuate that wealth gap and to want to ensure that the wealth gap stays there.
Right.
Can you?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would say the probate court, that is something in every county. They make a lot of money on people who don't plan ahead. And people will go to probate because, again, they haven't planned ahead, and sometimes they don't finish probate. And so they've taken your money, the filing fee, your assets sitting there, and it's just something I think it is a moneymaker, because we, maybe follow in our parents' footsteps and their parents' footsteps to not put our documents and our assets with beneficiaries on them, and it's something that's not good.
Yeah. Some of the systemic things that I see, especially in real estate, many of you have probably heard recently about appraisal bias, where the same house, one appraiser comes in, sees that there's an African-American family living there, either the family's home or there's, pictures on the wall or other artifacts that makes, one believe that it's an African-American's house, and it appraises low. And then that same person will either get a white friend or somebody to come over to the house, and they'll whitewash the house, basically take out every trace that a black person lives in that house, and now it appraises instead of 400,000, now it appraised for 650,000. You know, so things like that still, you know, they happen. Also, redlining, even though, you know, it's illegal now, but we're still suffering from the effects of redlining, and you can see it in our neighborhoods. You know, you see certain neighborhoods, they have never recovered from the systemic, you know, law of legal redlining. You know, not being able to get a loan to purchase a home in a certain area of town. You know, that led to a lot of our people needing to do land contracts. I hate land contracts, you know, for us, because it's the most expensive way to buy a house. You know, it's expensive to be poor. It's expensive to be, to not have information or be educated. It's very expensive. And rent to own. You know, a lot of us are renting to own furniture, TVs, washers and dryers. And when you do the multiplication of what that's really costing in the end, you know, you're paying way more for a washer and dryer than a very wealthy person's paying for a washer and dryer. You know, cash advance stores. We're doing so many things, high interest auto loans, where we go to that little corner lot and they're charging us over 20% interest rate for an automobile, you know. So there's a lot of those things in place and those systems that take advantage of us, you know, through like fair housing violations, predatory lending policies. So there's still a lot of that stuff in place that we're fighting against.
You know, we've talked about a lot of things here in terms of what we as African American can do to improve our condition and everything, and we talked about education and everything. But let's just for a brief second, because we're getting close to time here, but let's just talk about some of the things that we can do. Like, for instance, a lot of black people, we don't have a savings account, but we play the lottery every day. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You know, we don't invest in any type of investments, but we have 2 or 3 pit bulls, okay? Mm-hmm. You know, so what are some of those type of things that we look at that we need to reverse our way of thinking to overcome some of this, in terms of what are some of the things we can do besides educating everything? What are some of the things we should be able to do?
Mm-hmm. Saving is definitely a big one. Saving your money as best you can. I know sometimes it's hard with inflation. You know, it's been crazy to watch the last year, the inflation. But something that Twala mentioned earlier is owning property, real property. I don't know how many people come to my office that have tons of parcels of real property, and their net worth is very high. And so any opportunity that you have to invest in real property is something that, you know, would go a long way, passing that down to your kids as well, as far as legacy.
Yep. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I was just saying, what are some of the other things besides, we talked about educating people and everything, and she just, Attorney Hamilton just mentioned savings, mm-hmm. investing in land and stuff, and I think, so what are some of the other things that we can do that we need to, you mentioned mindset, but we need to start doing, you know what I'm saying? Because I look at it like, well, if you got enough money to play the lottery every day, but yet you don't have a savings account, something wrong with that picture.
Right,
okay,
yeah, so. I think living within our means is a big one, and prioritizing our needs over our wants, mm-hmm. and knowing the difference. I'll give a quick example. No names mentioned. This is years ago. I had a tenant that the first was coming, and she let me know, I'm going to be late on the rent because my son decided to go to both proms. So let that sink in, you know. And so we have to, a lot of times that goes back to our mindsets when it comes to where we place our priorities. Mm-hmm. So we have to learn to prioritize. We need shelter. We need utilities. We need food, you know. You don't need the designer labels. You don't need, you know, what is a need and what is a want. I think if we start right there, a lot of the money that we are, like I said, we're consumers. We consume everything, mm-hmm. you know, so a lot of that money that we're just shelling out, we could be using that money to start a savings account. Because when you prioritize, oh, you hear a lot of people, well, my kid can't do the at-home learning because we don't have a laptop, but your kid has 3 pairs of Jordans. So at some point you had enough money to go buy a laptop if you really needed, if you prioritize that laptop, And I know there's like real poverty out there, but a lot of times we have the income. It's just outgoing. We're not saving, we're not keeping, and it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
I know this is in your area. I know you can't wait to get this.
Actually, it's interesting because she was speaking financial literacy. I mean, when she was speaking of needs and wants, that's financial literacy. But the biggest thing, I think, you have to start with a budget. And the average person doesn't understand where their income is going because they don't sit down and say, what are my expenses? And there are some fixed expenses, as was mentioned. You have to eat. You have to have a shelter over your head. So if you understand what your budget is, now from there, now you know how much money I have. And I always say in financial literacy, you should always, who are you working for? You're working for yourself, so you should always pay yourself. Regardless of how much that is, you should have something that you're going to be able to pay yourself. There's only one person you pay before that, and as you know, that's your tithes, and you pay God first. But seriously, more than anything is understanding where is my expenses going. So if you ask the average person right now, you say, how much do you spend a month on gas? Most can't tell you. You can say, how much do you spend on groceries? If they say a number like 200, and then you really stop and look at it, they may be paying 300 or 400. Having a real life budget takes several months often to be able to figure out, and there's variables. But the other thing from a savings standpoint is we don't take advantage a lot of times when things are given to us. A lot of us work where 401ks are offered to us, but we don't take advantage of it. There's a match that's usually given depending on the employer, and we won't give up to that amount, or we won't even invest in a 401k at all because we want all of our money, where that's free money that's being given to you. So understanding what's available to us, and then when we are lower income, there's so many other things that we can get help with, that instead of doing that, we will just spend our money on the wrong thing, so to speak, opposed to getting the advantages that are given to us, and then from there, paying our expenses, and then understanding we may not have enough for Jordans, but we have enough to save.
Okay, we've got about 2 minutes to end this, and so we're going to go around the things you need to say that we didn't ask you that you want to say to this audience about closing the economic gap, and about gaining wealth. What is your closing statement? Attorney.
I would say, don't forget about ownership. Own your own business, own your own property, own your own home. That is really key, ownership.
I agree with you. And I'll add, purchase my book, Princess Mackie Buys a House, because it really does talk about financial literacy. It hits on budgeting, saving, goal setting, home ownership, and just the importance of all of that. And they say if you want to teach something to an adult, put it in a children's book. And so that's what I've done. And if you get that book and you read it, I guarantee you it will bless your soul.
We're going to get that book, and we're going to put it in our bookstore, so you can get it at Mount Zion Bookstore, because we're going to get that book and get it here, so we can actually do work in that book. Go ahead.
I think knowing our history is important. I love talking about Greenwood, but I think one of the things that has overtaken us is not understanding that we need to overcome that, and we can't continue to just fester over what happened in the past. So understanding the importance of what we can do today. And I think that's something, basically one of the things that I think often is done is we continue to say what has happened to us or what we can't do, instead of having a positive mindset and believing what you can do. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. So believe in yourself and know that there's power out there for you in yourself. Start with you, and being able to start with yourself is important, in my opinion. Have a positive mindset.
Hey, well, we want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We really think that you helped us achieve our purpose to inspire, inform, and motivate. You all have done a wonderful job. Thank you for providing with us. And to the audience out there, like I say, once again, we'd like for you to definitely let us know what you think about this program, and also get the book. I read the book. Yes, I bought the book. I read the book, and I'm telling you, it's a good book. It's a good thing for adults as well as your children. And before I turn it over back to the pastor for the closing comments and closing us out, just want to let everybody know, we're talking about money and everything, and I just want you to understand that it's okay to make money, but don't let money make you, okay?
Amen.
Awesome, awesome. Attorney Hamilton, thank you so very much.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you so much for coming. Our broker, owner, realtor, thank you. Twala,
you. Thank you.
Lockett Jones, thank you so very much, and thank you for what you do. Nate, praise God for you, man. We appreciate you. And so thank you, 3 amazing individuals that shows that it can be done. It is being done, and help is available right here among us. We didn't go California, everywhere. We went here in Kalamazoo. So there are individuals here that we can touch, that we know, that's been in the community most of their lives, that actually are willing to do this. And we can actually close this economic gap, and we can build wealth in spite of the conditions that exist. Thank you so very much, and stay tuned to another notice about another installment of Celebrating Black Excellence. So thank you for joining us. Join me in prayer. God, we thank you now for the gifts that you have on this stage, for the abilities that you've given these individuals that through your power, your creative ability, have been able to gain wealth, to demonstrate your power, to inspire others, and to be used to make our community better. We thank you for their strength. Thank you for your power that rests on them and works through them. And Lord, we cover them now with your word and your grace, that nothing will hinder what they do. And they are able now to go forth and make a tremendous impact for you. We love and honor you now. In the name of Jesus, this is thy servant's prayer. Amen.
Amen.